Hey guys, hi everyone. Hello everyone. Hi guys. I hope I'm audible as well as visible. Good morning everyone. Good morning. Hello Adil. Hi. Good morning everyone. I think I should be already audible and I can see few people have already joined. Not all of them, but let's wait 1 or 2 minutes for rest of the people to join and then accordingly we are going to start our session. So please give me a confirmation in the chat section whether I am audible or not. Am I? Good morning, Sukhjot. Good morning. Good morning. Audible 9. Thank you so much for confirmation. Perfect. Great. Good morning, Shubham, Eram. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Pradnya. Good morning. Good morning. So we'll be starting in 1 or 2 minutes. Let's wait for rest of the people to join. Good morning, Pavani. Good morning, Usha. Good morning. Good morning. So let's set up the environment in the meantime. Today's class is going to be one of the very important classes. Why? Because today we are going to discuss few very important topics, and that is related to DOM. And today we are going to take our decision back, discussion back to what we are actually doing, and that is related to web development. So let's quickly try to set up our environment. Meanwhile, please someone put a message in the WhatsApp group and ask your WhatsApp mates to join as soon as they can. So let me try to set up the environment in the meantime. I can still see only 20 people, not more than that. Good morning, Ankit. Good morning. Good morning, AK. Good morning, Said. Good morning, everyone. Perfect. I think we can start our session now. Shall we start, guys? So today is Dasera. So someone should have already informed me about that. We would have shifted our session to some other time, right? Walaikum salam, Sadi. Walaikum salam. Let me put a message quickly. Okay. I guess we can start our session. Haha, maybe that might be the reason, but I think I had no prior information of this. If someone would have informed me related to it, maybe I might have shifted the class, canceled today's class, and might have taken in some of the weekdays. We could have done that as well, right? But let's start our session now. Today's class is going to be one of the very important classes. Why? Because we are going to understand basically what DOM is and how we can actually write our JavaScript on our web application, right? So please make sure that you stay up till end. You do not leave the class in between, and this is going to be one of the classes that is going to actually make you understand how JavaScript works, how JavaScript is implemented in web applications, right? So let's start our class. Unfortunately, only 21 students is here. So what should we do? Shall we continue our class? What should we do? Shall we continue our class or shall we wait few more minutes for rest of the people? Because there are only 20 students here, not more than that. Perfect. Let's start our class. Okay, let's start. Let's start. Okay. Until now, we have been discussing a lot of concepts in our JavaScript. This is probably, I would say, our eighth class on JavaScript, which means we have already completed 7 to 8 classes on JavaScript. And we have discussed a lot of topics, whether we talk about basic constructs, variables, we can talk about data types, primitive, non-primitive functions, everything that we have discussed until now in JavaScript. Some of you might have wondered that, okay, we are learning JavaScript, but what are we actually learning it for, right? And that's what we are going to actually see some glimpse of it in today's class. We know that when we started this discussion, we understood that we use HTML for content creation, putting the structure on a website. We use CSS to actually design the same content. But on the other hand, when we talk about JavaScript, we actually create one very important point, which is dynamicality in that same website, right? We know if we use only HTML and CSS, such types of websites are called static websites. If we implement JavaScript on it, then it is called a dynamic websites. So, in order to create a dynamic website, JavaScript is very important. But whatever we have done until now, we have never actually inserted JavaScript live in our website. We have not done that. Maybe once or twice, once we try to understand what execution context is, how JavaScript executes its code, maybe at that point of time, we might have seen something. But apart from that, when we say dynamicality, let's try to understand what dynamicality actually means. Dynamicality simply means that once you create a website, any type of website on the internet, and maybe there are some buttons that you can interact with, maybe some text over there that you can interact with, maybe some tables, or maybe whatever content is. Now, JavaScript says that if you want to bring dynamicality, you have to make sure your website actually responds to actions. And when we say actions, what do we mean by actions? Actions simply mean what user can perform on the website. Maybe a click, maybe double click, maybe a key insert, maybe scroll up, scroll down, maybe mouse move, right? XYZ actions can be performed by a user. And if my website responds to the actions depending on our requirements, we say website is dynamic. For example, I will simply tell it whenever I click on this particular button, it should simply add a text over there that should be simply saying adfer, which means by default adfer text was not there, but actually based on when I performed an action on this particular button, when I clicked on it, it actually responded to me. Now such website, such behavior is called a dynamic behavior, right? And in order to do that, we know that we are going to understand our JavaScript, and we have seen lot of concepts already which we will actually implement over and on the website to create dynamic websites, right? Now let me try to create a simple website over here. If I go on this web page, let me quickly go to the web page, right? And let me try to bring the document here. Even let me put some h1 tag here that will simply say variable verse. Please make sure that you like this video right now. Please do that. You can do only JavaScript assignments. If you are a student who has joined from JavaScript, you can only choose to select, choose to do only JavaScript assignments, Bharat. Okay. Now see over here, I have created a simple web document here, right? Which says variable verse. And I know one thing for sure, because we have already discussed this in our previous class, that this particular tab that has been created, this window that has been opened over here, this particular thing in our JavaScript is actually represented by a window object, right? So if I simply go here in the inspect and if I try to open the console, if I try to simply see what my window is, we can clearly understand that this window is simply an object over here, right? We have seen that. And if I try to expand the same object, we can clearly see lot of XYZ things over here, but all of them, these all things are not related to this web development, but actually related to this whole tab that we have opened, right? For example, you might have actually seen, inner height. What is the inner height of this particular tab, inner width, so on and so forth, navigator, navigation, history, XYZ things, right? Which means that window object that we have, which we have already discussed in previous classes, it represents this whole tab. But on the other hand, inside the same window over here, there is one of the property that we can see with the name of document. What does this document actually represent? You can clearly see as soon as I take my cursor on it, it highlights something. Now, what does it highlight? It actually highlights this web application that we have. If you can clearly see, it does not highlight the whole tab. It highlights the body of this web page that we can see. And if I try to open the same document, which means document and window are not same. Remember that. This is one of the very important interview questions. He explained the difference between window object and document object. Window object represents this whole tab, which means all of the properties related to that tab. Okay, whether we talk about its cookies, whether we talk about its local storage, session storage, whether we talk about its inner height, inner width, XYZ things, history, location, so on and so forth. But on the other hand, document is simply a subset property of the same window. Where this document actually, if I try to expand this document here, we can clearly understand that this document is nothing but actually, when I even hover on this document, it is simply this web page that is being represented that we created. Now you can see it has a lot of properties on its own: child notes, children, document, similar, so on and so forth. But now let me go over here and let me try to actually console the same document. If I simply go here, I can simply say console.log, although I could have directly printed it. Let me try to say console.log document. And let me try to click enter. When I simply click enter on it, what do you think it represents? Don't you think we can clearly understand we actually are getting nothing but the web document which we have actually created? The web document index.html which we created few seconds back and which is right now being served on the live server. Yes or no? Give me a quick confirmation. When I wrote console.log document, we can clearly understand it returns something. What is that? It actually returns me my web page. So it means document is an object that simply represents the web page that you actually create. And what is our agenda? Our agenda is that I have simply an h1 tag there, maybe I have simply a button there, and on this button it simply says click me. Now my agenda is the basic definition of very simple example of dynamicality here. Basic example is that when I click on it, target this h1 tag and tell it to change its text it holds to Adfarshid, change it from variable words to Adfarshid. This is what I want to do. But in order to do that, don't you think I must first find a way to actually target this whole web page, so that from that whole web page I can find this element and implement my changes? Of course, yes. And that's what our document object model does. So document object model is simply the representation of the web page that we have created, this index.html, into simply nodes and xyz things which we will see in 5 to 10 minutes. But leave, even if you don't know document object model, even if you don't understand that, let's leave that completely aside. But we can clearly understand that we know something called as window, and inside the same window there is a property called a document, and when I try to access that document, it actually returned me my web page. So can we also say that the same web page that I have now, it has been modeled into an object? Can we say that the same web page which I created using index.html, it has been modeled into an object, and that object is called a document? Which means if the same web page has been modeled into an object over there, now it also means this object actually will have key value pairs, it will have properties, it will have methods. Now those methods we will implement on the same web page to actually bring the manipulations. So if I simply try to open this, if I simply try to open the body, we can clearly see same h1 tag, same button which I created. So it means this document that I have, it is nothing but actually the same representation of our web page. And that's what we mean by document object model. And with help of the same document now, and I could clearly show you over here as well. Let me try to access my window, and inside the window over there, if I try to open the same document, we can clearly see document does not just have, since it's an object, it just does not represent the web page, but it also holds these key value pairs, it also holds lot of methods over there, it also holds lot of xyz things. You can see that, and we can all discuss all of them. But the point that I'm trying to make you understand it, that when we talk about document, this document is actually the brahmastra. This is the tool with help of which what we can do is we can actually access our web page and then bring dynamicalities in it, then bring manipulations in it. And when I say manipulations, what do we mean by that? We can add, we can change, we can delete, we can enhance, we can do x y z things on our web page with help of the document. Now, if we have to understand the same document object model visually, like this is how you will see it on the internet, although I don't teach it like that. but let me still give you the same perspective as well. Okay, let's suppose this is my HTML web page. I have given you a real understanding of what document object model is by comparing it with window and opening and showing you the same web page using document. So that's what document object model is. With the help of the same document, we can actually understand it. Okay. Now I will simply go create a simple web document, head like this. And I know there's going to be a body like this, there's going to be a body like this. And we also know one another very important point, there will be a lot of tags here, right? There will be a lot of tags over here. Now document object model simply says the same web page I have understood via one of the properties called as window.document. Can we all agree to that particular point? The same web page, JavaScript actually models it around an object, and that particular object is called window.document. Thank you so much, Nisha. Right? Nishu, actually. This is what we actually mean by document object model, right? But if we have to understand the pictorial representation of it, this is how it is being created. Good morning, Zafar. So over here, we will simply have the main parent called as document itself, which means that if I have to access now any of these elements, any of these things over there, we will actually access it via an object, and that particular object is called the document. So document is like the main parent that is looking over everything. Since my web page is being modeled into a document, since my web page is being modeled into an object, and that particular thing is called a document. After that, inside this document, now all of these elements following its proper hierarchy will be converted into children's and nodes that we have. So the first node that we actually have is root element called as HTML. Now, according to this particular structure, how many children does my HTML have? How many nodes does my HTML have? We can clearly understand they have two. So HTML will actually be divided into two nodes over there. So something like this, which is going to be head and which is going to be over here body. Now let's suppose inside head we have a tag called as title over here, something like this, and it's going to simply be title. Now over here, this head actually will contain one of the nodes over there with the representation of title. We can give it some IDs, and with that ID we can actually identify this element, but we can understand that later on. But at least at this point of time, just let me create nodes with the name of tag names. Although we have ID nodes as well, we have text nodes, we have comment nodes, we have XYZ nodes, which we will see later on. In a similar way, maybe over here inside body, there's first node called as h1, second node called as div, third node called as main tag, so on and so forth, right? And then over there, we can clearly understand maybe main over there will have some of the tags called as h1 itself, called as image itself, so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to make you understand is a smaller representation of our document object model, where every single element actually represents the node, where every single element actually itself is an object. That is why we say, what do we say? We say everything inside our web application, everything inside our web document is an object. Why? Because document object model models my web page into objects. So even when I create h1 tag over there, for me it's an h1 tag, but for document over there it is nothing but an object, JavaScript object that we have. So text is not a child, it's a child node. Text is also a node, okay, which we will see later on. Ignore at least at this point of time. Just understand what I'm trying to say. Do we have any questions until now? Yes or no? So, what am I trying to tell you? I am simply trying to tell you that until now, we were able to communicate with our web application with help of H1s. We were able to look at this web application with help of H1s, H2s, and all the HTML elements. But now our perspective has to be changed. Now we have to look at this web application, the index.html file, not from the perspective of HTML elements and HTML tags, but from the perspective of JavaScript. And when we say from the perspective of JavaScript over there, we can clearly understand from the perspective of document. And this particular model that allows us to bring all of these things over there, this particular model that allows us to implement this much perspective on our web application, is actually called a document object model. I hope this makes sense. Window is everything. And of course, as I said, that whenever you open live server, whatever web application you create for the same tab, the tab will have XYZ particular window that I have opened right now. It have lot of properties, lot of implementation. So immediately window is created. Inside window, now of course we can all understand this whole window, this particular web page is also property of the same window, and that's what we mean by document. Now, with the help of the same document, what we can actually do is we can now access our web application. We can bring manipulations, we can delete, we can add, we can remove, we can style, we can do whatever we want. Everything that you can see on a web page can be modeled, can be created with help of the same document object model. Now, am I clear? Am I clear? Yes or no? So, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means we have created our websites using HTML, CSS. We have created properly everything, but now we have a tool. We have a very powerful tool with us, with the help of which we can actually create website from the very scratch, even without including any tag. By default, predefined, we can actually create everything using document object model. Now, if we have understood this particular part, this is theory all that I have explained. A little bit practical as well. I explained you what this document is, what Windows.document is. We cannot say Chrome is window. We can say when web application, when your website is opened on a tab, the tab is window over here. Go with. Okay, not the whole Chrome. Whole Chrome is a software. Okay, I hope that is completely understood. Now let's discuss some practicalities over here. Now, if I say document is this web page, let me ask a simple question. I have this h1 tag. I want to style it. I want to simply make its background color red. What is the first thing that comes into your mind? That I will give it an ID, I will give it a class, or with help of its name, I will simply implement CSS and select a selector and then style it. Right? Similarly, if we talk about that this web application is simply modeled into a document, don't you think document actually will also have methods with help of which we can actually target these elements with uniquely or as a group or as different things? We don't have to think about that right now, but yes, we will have different ways over there to actually find an element from the document, since document represents the whole picture. Now in the whole picture, if you have to find an element, of course document is going to help me. In this document, it represents the whole picture. I want to implement something, of course document is going to help me. So now everything, whatever my mind says, whatever my requirements are, I will implement it with help of document over here. Let's see a very simple example here. Okay, let's go. And now I will, of course, we understand one thing, that document is a JavaScript object, right? And even if you search type of document, you will find object, because everything is an object over here. And even I will prove you why h1 is also an object, how button is an object. I will prove you that in one of the classes as well, but pay attention, stay up till end. In order to write JavaScript, I will simply go create a script tag, because of course we have to write JavaScript, so we have to write it in script tag. Or there are, always remember, two ways. Either we can write script in our web document, either in head or in body, wherever you want. We can write script anywhere. Or we can create a separate file here and then script link it with our web application, which we will do later on, because at least at this point of time, I'm going to keep it very simple. So let me write console.log document over here, right? And let me try to divide my screen into two parts, and we can clearly visualize our same web application which we have created, that is being served on this port. We can see the same document over here. Wonderful. After that, I simply want to find an element, or I simply want to go over here and I simply want to tell it, hey, on my document, please write something. Maybe write my name, or maybe write anything. I don't care about it, but write something. Now I will simply go, for that I can simply use a method called as document.write. A simple method, document dot write. In this, I will simply pass something. Let's put Adfarshid. Will it work? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. Right? Right? Maybe, maybe not. And as soon as I did that, we can clearly understand that yes, it has written Adfarshid here. But who is going to write like this? As soon as this button ends, please write something like that. No, that's not how we will implement. We will actually bring dynamicality in a web application. We won't do something like that. Then what will we do, sir? We will actually tell it in that h1, in that p tag, in that image tag, or create new tags, right? But we will actually create proper HTML elements. We will properly target our proper HTML elements and implement a change. And in order to do that, there are few of the selector methods. Document holds few of the selector methods, and let us find them, discuss them one by one. We know that there is every single element holds an attribute, and that attribute is called id, with the help of which we can find an element uniquely. So let me go over it. For this h1 tag, I will simply give it an id called as main. Now, inside my document, just to give you a quick understanding of what document can do, inside the same document, I can simply tell it, please find me an element. And in order to do that, we can simply use a method called as get element by id. So one of the methods that document holds is get element by id, and it receives one argument, which is the id name itself. So I will simply go main, right? And I will simply try to store it inside in front of a variable. So let me simply go let element is equals to document dot get element by id, and that id is main. Perfectly fine. Console dot log, and let me try to print my element here. And if I look in the console, we can clearly see I got the h1 tag, which is actually element. So can I conclude one point here? And please confirm me in the chat, okay? And if you're enjoying this session, make sure you like it right now. Can we right now understand? Now the same document object model actually allows me to access the HTML elements using the same model, right? Because I don't know what get element by id is, what it returns, because I always told you there are 2 points: what it does, what it returns. Always 2 points, remember that, okay? We have not discussed that right now, but we have seen something in the console, and we can conclude here one point, which is yes, sir. Now, same document actually even allows me to access those nodes, access those particular single entities as well, and that is with the help of ID, right? Now, what what do I actually want to do over here? Always remember, even if there are 10 elements over there within same id, my always and always remember that get element by id that we have, it returns the first element that matches that. So I will simply go main, over then in between goes the content, but this will always return the first element that matches the query, whatever you pass as an argument. But of course, that's not the point. What's the point? The point is, okay, sir, we found the element. Like, my intention was to find an h1 tag using the same document object model. We were able to find that. But you tell me, what is the requirement of it? What is it that we actually need? I will come to that, Govind. What is it that I actually need? I actually need to change its content. So maybe I will simply tell it element dot inner html. Please change its inner HTML to what? To simply Adfar Rashid. So by default, it's variable verse. But even if I go right now, you can clearly see it has actually implemented a change, and that's Adfar Rashid. But you guys tell me one thing. I have implemented a change over there, and can I say right now, this particular content over there, is it a static content, or I have created this content dynamically? How have I created this particular content over there? I would say dynamically over there. Why? Because I know JavaScript is there to bring dynamicality. But if we look at this particular web application here, when I try to refresh my page, like, do you think user can actually guess that Adfarshid has been created with help of JavaScript? With help of JavaScript? Of course not, right? Because I know JavaScript will be immediately executed, even though by default I created variable verse here, but Adfarshid has been created immediately. So I am not able to see first variable verse and then Adfarshid. So even if I give this website a simple user, they will simply think, okay, this is a direct text, static text. This is not a dynamic web application. And of course, it's not. I would say it is static. What are static websites? Static websites are once you create a website, throughout the time, there won't be any change. Will there be any change if I do XYZ things over here? No. That's why we bring actions in our web application. Okay. Instead of telling it, please do one thing, directly change the inner HTML of my element to Adfar sheet. I will actually tell it when I click on this. And that's why our topic comes into picture called as, haha, we can do everything, whatever you can think of. We can actually only, we will discuss only one of the attributes here. Later on, I will discuss it as separate. And I will simply tell on click. Now, what is on click? On click is an event. On click simply means right now, whatever I will write over in front of this, when I click on this button, on click, do this. For example, on click, give me an alert. And what is that alert? That alert is hello, like this. So now see, if I simply refresh my page, although I was not supposed to refresh my page, it would have still worked. It says when I click on this, please give me an alert over there of hello. So when I click on this, we can clearly see there's an alert over there. So now this is dynamicality. Why? Because my website is actually responding to my actions. Do you understand? This is what we mean by dynamicality. That throughout the time, once this web page is live on the internet, my web page is not static in nature, but when I click, actually when I perform some actions, my website is responding to me. This is what we mean by dynamic behavior. But do we want to print alerts? No. Basically what we want is that when I click on this particular thing, then please change the content of this h1 tag and make it from variable verse to adfar sheet. And for that, I can implement a very simple logic. Instead of calling alert here, I will simply tell it call a function which is going to be simply fun at this point of time. Let me create a function with fun. We know how function calling works. And I will simply go create a function like this with the name of fun, like this, like this, like this, like this. In which I will simply tell it, give me an alert over there, and that alert is hello over here. Done. Now, what have I done over here? That whenever I click on this function, please call this particular function, which means alert. So if I click on it, you can clearly see alert of hello. Wonderful. But this is not what we want. We simply want actually a structure like this, element dot inner HTML. So it means whenever this function will be called at that point of time, then only do this. Now over here, if I refresh my page, I don't know why I'm refreshing my page continuously because it's live server. So now you can see when I click on this, now there's a change. So this is actually dynamic behavior, because by default the web page is variable verse, and now it is reflecting to my actions. And whenever it reflects my actions, which means it's going to bring dynamic change, which means throughout the time it's not static. That's why it's dynamic. I hope this makes sense, right? But there's one another very important question. Interview, note it down on your rough copy. Note it down. One of the very important interview questions. If I am the interviewer, I will ask this question to freshers. You can see I have implemented this element here. Let me do one thing. I will simply say console.log. Enter. Console.log. I will simply say type of element, right? Type of element. And we know that when we talk about this element, this element is nothing but an h1 tag. And if I go in my console over here, we can see that as soon as I click on this, you can see it's an object, right? And always remember that this inner HTML is a property if that object is an element. By element, I mean h1, h2, h3, h4, HTML element. So inner HTML is properly implemented. But similar to inner HTML, we also have one other property called as inner text. Okay, inner text like this. And if I refresh my page, if I click on this, we can clearly see, yes, it actually changes my content from variable verse to adfar sheet. Yes, sir. The behavior is same. Very good. There's one another property here called as text content. So I will simply go refresh my page, click on this. We can clearly see adfar sheet again. So inner HTML is one thing, inner text is another thing, text content is another thing. So, sir, what is the difference between all these three? And one of the very important questions. Because you all might have seen that when I implemented element dot inner HTML, let me go back. Okay, Let me try to remove this as of now. I will come to this later on. And we can clearly see as soon as I click on this, the element is h1. It is changing the content of h1 variable verse to adfarshi. Wonderful. Now I have on the same element over there, I have implemented one other property. Instead of inner HTML, I have implemented inner text. And now if I click on the same behavior is very good, changing the content to adfarshi. Another over here is text content. And now text content, even when I bring element dot text content, in that case, same behavior. So what is the difference? There is a proper difference. And unfortunately, we do not understand that because no one explains it thoroughly. But let me try to explain thoroughly. Let's understand what's the difference between all these three. First of all, let's talk about inner HTML. But in order to do that, I will simply go here and I will simply try to comment this code. I will try to let me try to create a separate file because that will help me to create proper comments instead of adding comments everywhere. So index.javascript, and I will simply remove this Control X and let me simply put it here, which means I'm going to separate my JavaScript now. Okay. And this script will not be like this. I will simply have script with the src, and that src will be /index.js. It means one of the same things, right? So whatever JavaScript I will write here, now that will be implemented at line number 12 on this web application. So you can clearly see even now it also works. Why? Because it is properly connected with respect to each other. Now I will simply go here and let me try to do one thing. Let me try to simply go inside index.html and I will create element. Let me create a div with the ID over there. Let's suppose the ID is container. Done. Inside this container, I will simply go. Let's suppose I will simply go create a text that will be hello, and I will create a b tag which is going to simply be world, and then I'm simply going to create a p tag, and that simply will say lorem 10. Okay, not lorem 10. Let's create lorem 5 only or 4. Done. But for this p tag, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go and implement a property called as display style property. And inside style property, I'm going to implement display property, which is going to be hidden or none. Okay, like this. So we can all understand what I have done here. I have simply created a div. It contains hello text directly. It contains b tag and it contains p, where style actually displays none. It's not visible in the output. Understand the difference. Now over here, I will simply go. Let me try to comment all of the code and I will simply tell it, please find an element. So let me create a variable with the name of element. That is going to be on the document. I'm simply going to get an element by ID. And that element is going to be simply container. So can I clearly say, as of now, I have simply trying to target this particular element whose ID is container. Am I doing that? Which means it's supposed to return me this whole div. Of course, yes, right? That's because that is the element whose ID is container. Even if I go write console.log my element element, we can clearly visualize it in the console as well. So let me go to console. We can see our div with all of the inner text and all of the things that it holds, right? Even p tag whose displays none as well, right? But I don't want to print element. I want to print element dot inner HTML. Now, when I print element dot inner HTML, you can clearly see one thing. This particular inner HTML of this div, it actually prints hello with b tag world as well, with p tag display none as well, which means it prints everything that it holds as inner HTML. It displays me all the tags as well. It displays me all the text content as well. I hope this makes sense. Am I clear at least at this point of time? Very good. After that, I will simply say console.log. Now inside this, I will simply go write element dot inner text. Now, when I say element dot inner text, we can clearly see only hello world. We cannot see b tag there. No. We cannot see p tag whose displays none. Even not its text content as well. Do you see the difference between inner HTML and inner text? Inner HTML means display me all the inner thing that this container holds or this particular element holds with its all HTML tags, with its all text content, with its all elements that are hidden in nature as well. So that is the difference between inner HTML and inner text. And I will show you the visual representation of it in 2 seconds as well. But on the other hand, if I try to write console.log my element element dot text content. We can see there's small difference between inner text and text content. We can see it displays the content that is hidden as well. It will display only text content. It will not display HTML tags. It will not return HTML tags. No. Inner HTML only returns the text tags as well. Sorry, HTML tags as well, like P tag, like B tag. But if I talk about inner text, it returns only the content which is visible, whose display is properly, implemented. But on the other hand, if I talk about text content, it displays me text content only, but it also returns me the content which is hidden in nature. So I hope these differences is quite clear. So write down on your rough copy. This is one of the very important interview questions. The difference between inner HTML, the difference between inner HTML, inner text, and text content. Am I clear? So between inner text and text content, there's not that much difference, but only difference is text content is also going to return me that much text as well, which whose display is hidden, whose display is none, which is not visible in nature. It's going to display that particular text as well. I hope that makes sense. Am I clear? If you did not knew this point already between inner HTML, inner text, and text content, make sure you put a like in the video. Okay. Now let me do one thing. I will show you, apart from this, I will show you other difference of it. Let me try to comment this code and let me try to uncomment this code. At least at this point of time, I will simply go write inner HTML. Okay. In this inner HTML, I will simply go, instead of telling it, please, when I call this particular function, make the inner HTML is equals to what? Let me create mark tag. And in this mark tag, I will simply say hello world. And let me close my mark tag. Now see, look at the output if I click on it. If I click on this, I am telling it, please target an element whose ID is main and change its inner HTML to this mark tag. And when I do that, we can clearly see it actually implements mark over there. It makes sure that this particular tag is implemented. So whatever this text is here, it will be implemented and this will be properly formatted as well. So that's what inner HTML means, that implemented with proper HTML content. But on the other hand, if I go and if I write inner text or text content in any one of them, we can clearly see now. As soon as I click on this, it will not treat this less than sign mark as an HTML element, but it will treat it as text. See the difference? Understood the difference? So this was what it returns. This is how it implements it. So this is what the real difference between inner text, inner HTML text content is. I hope this makes sense. Give me a quick confirmation in the chat, sir. We understood the difference between these three. Am I clear? Am I clear? Everyone must reply now. I do not see. I see only few people being active in the chat. Done? Understood? Note it down as well. Moving forward, I can see only still only one or two response in the chat. Please reply. Okay. So now over here inside the index.html that we have, I will simply go here and I will simply try to implement few other things. Someone asked me few seconds back, sir, apart from changing the content over there, can we change the style of it? Of course we can. Whatever you can think of, we can do that. Whatever you can think. Animations, transition, style, content, deletion, updation, anything that you can think of, we can implement every single thing. Now, see this. We all can understand one thing. We all can agree to one point, which is that the element that I have over there on line number 2, it is my h1 tag. And every h1 tag has attributes associated with it. Okay. Let me do one thing. I will simply say console.log, not console.log. I will simply say there's one thing called as console.dir, if I'm not wrong. If it works, well and good. If not, then we will see. So I will go write console.dir and let me try to call this function. See, it is an object. Now see, I have my element over here, right? And this element is an h1 tag. If I simply try to print it as an what it is, so I will simply go print my element. You can clearly see I am getting an h1 tag as soon as I click on this, right? But on the other hand, if I want to see what are the properties that are linked to it, right? We can clearly do console.dir element. I want to see object as object. So for that, we can use console.dir. There are a lot of consoles. Console.error, console.dir, console.table, console.log, console.this and that. Okay. Console.time, so on and so forth. So you should see all the versions of console. You should find that. Do a little bit research. Okay. Now over here, if I try to expand the object h1, whose id is main, we can see how many key value pairs are associated with it. So we can clearly see its ID is main, its inner HTML is this thing, its inner text is this, right? We can see its node name, XYZ things over here. But you guys tell me one thing. Let's all agree to one point. There are a lot of keys even which we don't even know. Maybe there's one of the keys that we can see over here called as style, right? We can see title. Do you think we have set title on this particular h1 element? No, we have not set any title attribute on this. But we also know one another very important point, which is that this title is a key of this particular element which we have read using our JavaScript. So even if I have to update the same key, what will I do? I will simply tell element dot title. Element dot title, please update it with what? Please update it heading tag like this. It means now I, even if I have to add an attribute over there, I don't have to go to the element there and I don't have to tell it, okay, go here and write title. No, but I know this title is already a property associated with this particular h1 element. So it is key value pairs associated with this particular element as soon as I try to read it with a document object model. Now, when I click on this, call this function over there, we can clearly see on this h1 element, there's a title that's associated with it, and it hovers and gives us heading tag there. Which means that you want to set any universal attribute, you want to set anything, simply directly on the element, you can actually set the property. And this is the syntax of JavaScript. If we have any property, if we have defined an object, can't we directly set update its property directly? It's if it is configurable, yes or no? Can't we directly set the property, age, name, first name, last name, salary, which we have seen in our previous class that when we discussed our objects? Similarly over here, since this element is nothing but an object, we understood, we concluded over here that every single entity, every single thing over there is nothing but an object. Every single thing is an object. So h1, p tag, mark tag, b tag, all the tags, JavaScript treats them as an object. And if they are object, it means their properties can be created, their property can be deleted, their property can be set, their property can, whatever you can think of, you can do that. So if we are able to access our title property over here, we can see title is equals to heading tag. Don't you think similarly the same element also contains an attribute called as style? Don't we have style attribute associated with every single HTML element? Of course, yes. It's a universal attribute. It's a default attribute added for every single element. So we can add style over here as well. How we changed our title, in a similar way, we can change our update our style directly as well on the element. And if you go here, you can clearly see, even when we talk about style, you can see there is a play button in front of it. And what does this play button represent? It represents it's an object. Since it's an object, it will have its own key value pairs, like what is the animation duration you want, all the properties that you can think of, all the CSS properties, color, column full, column gap, display, fallback, fill, all XYZ things. So inside this style, we understand if I want to access element.style, element.style can be actually updated. Not only that, even element.style itself is an object. And since style is an object, it will contain its own key value pairs. So tell me one thing here. I want to simply update this particular property called as color of this h1. This one. So what will I do? Don't you think we can simply go here, tell it inside the element that I have, target it style, and inside that there's a property called as color. Please update that with red. Can we do that? Think about it and tell me in the chat. Can we do this? Can we do this? Of course we can. Because style is a property of element, color is a property of style. And it's a nested object over there. So if I click on this, we can clearly see it became red. And it has to become a red. And this is how we can implement style. There are a lot of XYZ things, 100 ways of adding a style, but I'm going step by step. Step by step, okay? In a similar way, whatever you want to update its class, simply element.class, element.title, element.this. So whatever properties you see it, you can actually update every single property directly as well for the element that we have. I hope that makes sense. So this is how we can find an element uniquely, and how we can actually implement any property that you can think of and change it. Now remember one thing. Let's suppose using the same style you want to change its background color. So I will simply go at element dot style dot. Now see, when we talk about background color in CSS, if you remember, this is how we were writing background color. So we used to write background middle score color, right? And then we used to write whatever the property is, right? Something like this. But always remember that whatever properties are two words, collection combination of two words, like background color, font size. I have some other properties, font weight, font family. So whatever combination we have of two words, they will be written in camel case, like background color with C capital. So I will simply go write background color as green, or let me say pink, light, right? In a similar way, if I have to write element dot style dot font size, I will not write font middle score size. I will write font S capital and then size is equals to what? Is equals to, let's put 40 pixel. And now if I click on this, everything is properly implemented and we can see that as well. So it's in camel case. Always remember, whatever properties we have, uh, can we write style background color? How we can of course write that, because there is a way of writing our property like that as well. But you have to see whether background color is the key name or not, right? Let's try test it out as well. So I will simply go here. Since I know in order to access a property of object, we can actually access it like this as well. So let's see whether we can do that or not. So I will simply go write background color. But even in this case, background color has to be like this, right? Because if you go in the output inspect over here, we cannot write background middle score color. Why? Because Govin, if you go to inspect, if I go to console here, let me try to open this and let me try to open my style quickly. Let me try to open style and let me try to find background color. Is the property name background middle score color or background color? The property key name is background color with no middle score. So you have to write background color like this only. You cannot put middle score in between. Okay, because that's not the key name. Whatever key name is, only that will be implemented. That has to be implemented. And you can write it like this. I hope that makes sense. Okay, perfect, wonderful. So this is how we can make our simple web application at this point of time dynamic. And we have seen a very basic method called as document.getElement by ID. And whatever the ID is, it returns an element with respect to that. But tell me one thing here. Tell me one thing, which is, do you think that in your web application where there are hundreds of tags, thousands of tags, you will be selecting elements one by one? You will be selecting element by targeting it with ID? Of course not. We know that in CSS we have hash ID uniquely, but we also have class selector as well. We also have name selector as well. Right? We used to select our elements as a group. In a similar way, there are different ways as well, with help of which we can actually find an element with help of a group over there. And let's try to do that. So let me simply go here and I will simply try to, let me remove this because no, let me keep it like this. Let me create another file. So I will simply go create dom2.html. Okay. And let me try to create basic p tags or basic bunch of tags. So I will simply go create h1 with a class over there. And that class is going to be, let's suppose, para. Okay. And in which it's going to simply have content. Let me not create any content. So Control C, Control V, Control V. Then I will simply have p tag whose class is also going to be para. Para done. And maybe I have one other tag called as let's keep only 4 tags. Or let's even create another element which is h4, and that h4 will have a class as para. So now I have multiple elements over there, and which is class para. Yes, I have already completed HTML CSS before JavaScript. We have taken 12 classes on HTML and CSS Govin, so you can watch them, and definitely they are available in the same playlist. So please make sure, if you have any confusion, we have discussed almost every single topic in HTML CSS. You can check all those videos. Okay. Now see, now there are in my web application right now, if you see, there are multiple h1s, there's p tag, there's h4. Now I actually want to select these elements as a group. So how do I do that? So of course I will simply go here inside the script and I will simply write script tag. And in this script tag, I'm simply going to write my document on the document. Please get an element by class name. Now see, I know that the elements that I actually have is not going to be a single element. There is a possibility of multiple elements. That is why it is not get element by class name. It is get elements by class name because it's plural. It's not singular. There's a possibility of plural return as well. And I will simply give it a class name, and that class name is para. Okay. Now see, over here, I will simply put it in an variable. So let ele is equals to document.get element by id, and I will simply go console.log my ele, and let me change my output here with dom2. So dom2.html. And if I go inside my console here, we can clearly see that it returns an HTML collection. This HTML collection is on its own very interesting as well. So let me try to open this HTML collection. We can clearly see that it actually returns nothing but an array, right? 0 index h1 dot para, 1 index h1 dot para. Even let's do one thing. Instead of this ele printing it, I will simply say type of ele. Although we know it's going to print an object. Why? Because array itself, it prints type of array, prints an object, right? So if I go here, if I print only console.log this, we all can agree that this is nothing but an array of 5 elements. So always remember that whenever we talk about method called as get element by class name, it returns not a single element because there is a possibility of multiple elements, and it simply returns an array of those elements. Now I want to simply do one thing, and you will tell me in the chat the answer of it. I want to change the inner HTML of every single individual element whose class is para, and I want to make it Adfar Rashid, or I want to make it anything else. How do I do that? How do I approach? Take 1 minute of time and then answer. I know inside this ele I have an array. Can I write ele dot inner HTML? Can I write something like this? Yes or no? ele dot inner HTML. Very good, Basu. Inner HTML, can I write ele? Can we do something like ele dot inner HTML? Of course not. We cannot. Why? No, we are not talking about query selector here, Vishwajit. Why? Because we are discussing elements by class name. Query selector and query selector all will be discussed later on because that's some other way of finding an element. So let's discuss one by one. So we are not talking about query selector on. The question is, can we write ele dot inner HTML? The answer is no. Always remember one point. Always remember one point. If we want to implement inner HTML, it means my intention is I simply want one thing, that inside ele object there is a property called inner HTML, right? That's how it's going to be implemented. ele dot inner HTML means that there is a property that is inner HTML. But inner HTML, don't you think this particular property is actually part of only HTML elements, like individual HTML elements, whether we talk about individual div, h1, p tag, any other tag, but they have to be HTML element. And do you think ele is an HTML element, or ele is an array? Is it an array or is it an individual element? It is an array. So do not blindly implement your methods. Never do that. Do not blindly implement your methods. See what it is returning. That's why I told you always it's not about what it does. It's actually about what it returns. It returns an array. And array does not have inner HTML method. Element has inner HTML method. Always remember, always try to find what it returns, not what it actually does only. It returns an array, and array do not have inner HTML. But I know the ele at index 0 does have inner HTML. Why? Because if I try to console.log my ele here, and if I try to see, we can clearly understand that this ele is nothing but actually an array. And on 0th index, we have this element. On 1th index, we have this element. 2 index, 3 index, 4 index. Right? Yes or no? It's an array. So, of course, when I try to print ele at index 0 over there, then it's going to return that h1 element. ELE at index 1, then it's going to return another H1 element. Index at 4, it's going to return H4 element, which means ELE is actually an array over there. Of course, array is an object, but the point is inner HTML property of that object? No, it's property of that object that is element on its own. But ELE is not an element. Inner HTML can be implemented on this H1, on this body, on this p tag, on the div, but not on an array, because inner HTML is property of an element, not of an array. Please understand that. Similarly, tell me one thing, Saeed and everyone. Can we actually write style property of an array? Does array have any style property? Does array have any style property? No. Individual elements have style property. So you cannot write ELE dot style. But if you have an ELE as an element, then you can write style property. Right? Now see, we can simply tell it ELE at index 0 is equals to what? Is equals to Adfar Rashid, something like this. And if I now go here, we can clearly see H1 element has Adfar Rashid. Perfectly fine. In a similar way, Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V, we can go over here, right? Index 1, then we get an index 2 over here like this, right? And similarly, we can go here, right? Index 3, and then we can simply go right index 4, and so on and so forth. We can target all of the elements individually by their indexes and update their content like this. Of course, well. But you tell me, guys, let's suppose there are 10 elements. Will you target all of the elements by their indexes now? Index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Of course not. We have to be very, very, very efficient here. We have to understand one point here, that the same logic that we are trying to implement, how we can implement the same logic in a far better way. In a far better way. And we know one thing here. And what is that? We know that array has lot of methods that are supported on it. If it is an array, we have taken two classes on array. We can implement everything there, almost, although not everything, but we can implement all of them here. We can implement loops on it. Even let's suppose you don't know any loop, you don't know for each, you don't know for off, you don't know any loop here. We all can implement normal loops as well. I can simply go right for let my I is equals to 0. Then I should be less than my ELE dot length. Even you know this, then I plus plus, right? And then simply go there and tell it ELE dot I dot style dot color is this. Or you can simply tell ELE at the index I. Please go over there and make their inner text over the in the HTML is equals to hello world. So this is how we can implement loop on it since it's an array. So if we can do that, of course, you can clearly see hello world, hello world, hello world, hello world, hello world. So you can at least, even if you don't know for each loop, you don't know for off loop, you don't know all these loops, normal loops, you know, since it's an array, we can directly implement our array over here as well. That's why I always say, as a fresher, this used to happen to me as well. We used to go with our intuition. Don't do that. Even especially in JavaScript, remember what it returns. Understand what it's going to return, and whatever it returns, can we implement it on that or not? Can we implement enrichment on an array? No. Can we implement style on an array? No. But it can be implemented on individual elements, and we can find individual elements from that array using their index numbers. And that's why I've implemented I0, I1, I2, I3, I4, I5, so on and so forth. Okay, I hope this makes sense. So over here, we will take a break of 10 minutes. Please make sure that you like this video, you share it right now with your friends, and ask them to join as many as they can. And let's take a break of 10 minutes now. After 10 minutes, we are going to resume our discussion, and we are going to continue our discussion on the same topic called as DOM. Okay? So do not leave class, even break as well. Stay here. Do not leave the class. Idri Bato, you have any questions, ask them in the chat. And in the meantime, I will give you a little bit assignment. In these 10 minutes, put it in the chat on the same array. How can we implement map and for each loop? Please do that. So let's take a break of 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we will join again. We will start again. See you guys. Bye. Hey guys, hi everyone, welcome back. I hope I'm audible as well as visible. Am I? Hello guys, hi everyone. Hello, 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 hi. I think I should be audible as well as visible, right? So we will start in 1 minute. Please, we will talk about that. We will talk about that. So let me put a message in the WhatsApp group and then we will see. Okay, let's start our discussion again. Okay, like I can see few of the queries in the chat, something like array.from, what it is. So let's talk about that as well. Although that's not important here, but let's talk about that. Remember, whenever we talk about methods like HTML elements by class name, or whenever we talk about methods that return HTML collection, you have to understand at that point of time, though it returns a collection, because the necessity, the requirement is we will have to read something in terms of collections, right? By that I mean that when we talk about document.get elements by class name, it's elements, and there are multiple elements that have same class name, right? Possibility hai कि collection return hoga, and though it actually gives me an array, but it's not actually an array. It's an array like structure that it returns, because array is the closest structure that will actually hold something like this. So a document gives me, it does not give me a complete instance of an array, but it actually gives me an array like structure in the return. What does that actually mean? Remember one very important point. There's one concept that we actually called as prototype. Okay, there's a proper class that I will take on the prototyping. Will take class what prototypes are. That's going to be a very interesting class, definitely. Okay, what do we mean by prototype? See, when we write array.pop, when we write arr.push, arr.map, arr.this, arr.that, all the methods, of course they are predefined. And when we say predefined, you just understand that they are defined in a box called as prototype, at least at this point of time. Okay, or even let's leave prototype, let's simply say they are defined already in the JavaScript in a box. So when we create an array over there, that box gets attached to that particular array automatically, because now since it's an array structure, that box, whatever that box properties hold, they will be implemented on these arrays, and you can now call the methods for each map and xyz methods there. But if I talk about this HTML collection over there, it's not an array. It does not have a connection to that box. It has a length property, it has few properties, but it does not have a complete connection to that box. That's why for each loop won't work here. So when we talk about HTML collection is simply a collection of an HTML element, usually returned by methods like this get element by class name. And always remember, we can access elements in such HTML collection since it is like an array, similar to an array. We can access it using indexes, or we can simply access it by using property names directly, how we actually access as well. But of course, we cannot implement for each, and let's try to implement for each. So I will simply go here. Let me try to remove this, and I will simply go, let me try to implement for each. So ele dot for each. And I know one thing, although it does not work, even it would have automatically suggested me for each there. So I will simply go call a function like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. And you can clearly see it gives me an output error, which is for each is not a function. And as I said, for each won't work. Even if you talk about map, I think map is also not going to work. So all these methods that are defined in that box for a specific array, proper array, it's not going to work over here. But what can we do here? We can simply implement a proper method called as array.from. We simply, if there is an object, or if there is any entity that is somehow similar to an array like object, array like structure, in that particular case, what we can do is we can actually convert our structure into an array. So since it's not like an array, but since it's not an array but like an array, we can actually convert it to an array. And for that we use a method called as array.from. So I can simply go here, let me try to remove it, and I will simply go array Since array is a structure, proper data structure dot from. So from this array is a prototype, and from this, please convert it. Now, what am I trying to convert? I'm simply trying to convert my ELE. So let me simply go write ELE. Now, this is a proper an array structure here. Now, I have made it a proper array structure. Now, I can implement a for each loop on it. I can clearly see as soon as I implemented dot on it, now it is connected to that prototype. It's connected to that particular box. And now I can implement any method that is there defined for an array. And that's why I will simply use for each loop, in which I'm simply going to receive item, comma, index over here. And then I can simply tell it to please do whatever you want. At least at this point of time, I'm going to try to console my item. And once I do that, you can clearly get all of the items in the output. That is where my array.from comes into picture. So definitely think about it, and always remember one point, even note it down on your rough copy as well, which is that whenever we talk about any method that returns an HTML collection, it is not going to return a perfect array, a correct array, but it's going to return a structure that looks like an array. It has that that covering of an array, but not an array. Why? Because it's not connecting to that prototype. It's not connected to that box. We can say it is an array without the prototype. It's an array without that box. That's what we can say simply. That's what HTML collection actually returns. I hope that makes complete sense. Am I clear until now? Done? Perfect. Very good. Right? Let's move forward. So this was one another method called as class names. At least right now, our intention, our agenda is to discuss methods only, like what different type of methods we have with help of which we can actually reach to an element. So we have class names. What is the other selector that we can actually talk about here? The other selector that we can actually talk about here is, let me try to console X this and let me try to remove it. And for your understanding later on, I will store it here, right? So that later on you can remember it from here. If I try to push it, this code to the repository, maybe someday. Over here now, instead of selecting an element by its class name, and we know class names. Also, one other very important point here. I have a simple question. Let me create only one element whose class is para. In this case, I'm simply going to create an element. Let ele is equals to on the document. Please get me an element by class name, and that class name is para. Now tell me, if I try to console my ele, what's it going to print? What's it going to print? If I try to console ele, or if I write ele dot inner HTML, do you think it's going to work? That's what I'm asking. Hey Ayush, hi. How are you doing? It does not matter whether there is a one individual element or 100 elements. It will always return HTML collection. Because of course an array with single element is also an array over here, right? So if I try to console.log my ele, you can clearly see it's still an HTML collection. That's an H1 whose class is in para. So that's one very important point. Do not even think that if you try to reach an element over there with a class name, and if it is a single element, in that particular case, it will return only that individual element. No, that's not how it works. You have to understand it will always and always return for a function never changes, no matter what. Return is always fixed for a particular function that we have. So in this case, it will always return HTML collection. So the Byandu H1 answer is not acceptable. Why? Because I have always told you, even before as well. Remember, methods, the most important thing about a method is what returns. And return thing does not change. So if it returns HTML collection, it will always return HTML collection no matter what. Unless and until there's a if else in that method, okay? Which we do not have in this case. Now, instead of selecting an element with help of the classes, we can go here. Let me try to put some random text here, random one, text one. And in this case, let me try to say Control C, Control V, Control V. We can also find and reach an element from this document object model with help of an element name as well. The element name. And that particular topic is called, that particular method, sorry, is called on the document, please get me an element by the tag name. So by the tag name, and we also know one very important point. When we talk about tag name, it's completely possible. It's completely correct, I would say, not possible, correct, that there is going to be plural. because it's not necessary that if I write h1, there's no other h1 allowed. No h1s are allowed. Hundreds of thousands, even if you write only one, but there's possibility of other h1s. So even in this case as well, I could simply say that it is going to return and collection in the return, right? In the output. So if I simply say let my ele is equals to document dot get element by tag name, and then I will simply say console dot log ele, we can clearly see it's simply returning HTML collection of those elements. And the elements now, since it's an HTML collection, of course it will work in a similar way. So let me create a function. Let me create a button over here, and that button will simply have an on click event, and on that on click event I will simply tell it to call a function like this, and let me define a function fun over here like this, like this, like this, like this. Now in this case I will simply tell element dot style dot color is red, and if I try to divide my screen into two parts, now whenever I click on this button, so I will simply say change. Now let me go here and let me click on this change. You can see it's red, right? We can simply go here, Control C, Control V, Control V. So 1 and then 2. Now you guys tell me, at this point of time, we can understand that this EL is nothing but an array-like structure. Can we now implement for each on this ELE? Can we implement map on this ELE? Can we implement some other methods on this ELE? Yes or no? Can we do such thing? Can we do such thing? Can we implement for each? Why would we say yes, 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 yes? Why would we do that? Few seconds back, when I told you that whatever method will return HTML collection, it is not an array, it's an array-like structure. So unless and until I do not convert into an array first, we cannot directly implement any prototype methods like map and this. So either you have to find a way to convert it to an array first, and then we can use for each, like array.from. Or Pradnya gave us a very good answer here as well. We can also use separate operator. How we can use separate operator? We can actually, we know that this h1, h1, h1 is a collection. We can simply separate those values. So ele dot for each or map. We can now implement for each here or whatever we want to do. So this is also, but it's also converting into an array. It's also creating a copy of it, but creating an array structure out of it and then implementing for each map directly. Can we implement directly on this ele? We can implement for each. No, we cannot. It's an HTML collection. That's where node list comes into picture, which we will see later on. Why node list is important. So whenever we talk about any method that returns an HTML collection, you go in the console, it returns HTML collection. In front of that array, it's written HTML collection. It's not an array, it's array-like structure. It's an array-like structure. So you have to convert into an array so that you can connect it with its prototype, with its box, to implement the methods. Now we can use array.from or separate operator over there to actually convert into an array, but you cannot do it like this. Okay, I hope that makes sense. That's why even earlier as well, I directly implemented my loop. So let I is equals to 0. I should be less than ele dot. So I should be less than ele dot length, right? And then I can simply go right I plus plus. Let me close this like this. And over here, I can simply tell it, please do one thing, ele add rate of I index dot style dot color is equals to red. And when I click on that, it works. Because for loop, it's not related to arrays, it's related to the structure, any type of iterable object. Whether it's a string, whether it's an object, whether it's an array, it does not matter. For loop will work on every single thing. But if I talk about for each, if I talk about map, if I talk about all those methods, they are related to an array-like structure only, array with its prototype, the original array. So you have to convert into an array first to implement such prototype methods. I hope that makes sense. Prototype and all those things which we will discuss later on, what prototype is and how even we can create our own prototype and add methods to it. We will see all of that. Okay, I hope this makes sense. Completely clear? Done. Wonderful. So this is one another method of finding an element, selecting a group of elements from an array-like structure, and that is get element by tag name. So we have seen three methods at least at this point of time. Number one is get element by ID, which will always identify element uniquely and it's going to return an element individually only. Second thing that we actually have is which is called get element by class name, get elements by class name, returns an HTML collection. Third thing is get elements by tag name, returns an HTML collection. Is there any other way of finding an element? Yes, there is. There's one another method. Let me try to console X this and let me try to put it inside this. Okay. There's one another similar way which we can actually see, and it is called get element by name. So I will simply say let my ELE is equals to on my document, please get an element by name. What does name actually mean? Name means, let me try to go with and let me try to make name is equals to, let's suppose, para or main. Let's say main. Done. And do you think there's anything related to main? And what does name actually mean? We know for form elements, we have seen one of the attributes called as name, right? Remember that form attributes, not tag name. Tag name is already discussed. We have discussed tag name. Remember that. But if I talk about name attribute, which elements, which HTML elements have name attributes attached to it? Tell me quickly. Form. Browser object model, which we will understand later on. Even you can understand right now, DOM and BOM are both same, but we will see the difference later on. Okay. So is there any HTML element where we are using name attribute? Of course there is. There are input tags where we use name attributes. So in which means this type of selector is a special type of selector. This type of method is a very special type of method which will work. Let me simply go right input tag with a name over there, and that name actually is my main. So in this case, if I try to console.log my ELE, let's try to find what it does. So we simply have console my ELE over here, and let me go inside the console. In the inside the console here, we can clearly see it returns node list. Now something different. Now this is fun part about our DOM. Now that something is different here. We can clearly see node list here, right? Earlier, it returned HTML collection, and that was an array. And now over here, it's a node list. It's also an array. So what's the difference? What's the difference? That's an interview question. What's the difference between HTML collection and node list? One of the very important questions, and of course, you will be able to understand it properly. Maybe not today, maybe in our next tomorrow's class, where we will understand other things with it, static, live, all those things related to whatever the changes are. But at least right now, we can understand that it's not always that whenever there's a possibility that it is going to return collection of elements, it will return HTML collection. No, that's not possible. It is also going to return an node list as well. So what is node list? What is node list? What is node list? First of all, when we say HTML collection is an array-like structure. Okay. And if I talk about node list simply says that I am going to be collection of nodes. HTML collection is of collection of HTML elements. Understand the difference first of all. Difference is in the definition first of all. HTML collection is the collection of HTML elements only, which means H1, H1, H1. The element itself, whole element as the collection. But if I talk about nodes, node list, it is the collection of nodes, which means it can not just include HTML elements, but it can also include other type of nodes, like text nodes, like comment nodes. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? So node list over there, let me try to, of course, there's a possibility, although node list cannot be understood here properly, because we will understand later on with query selector all, and we will understand what is the other difference. When we talk about node list, it can be either live or static. So there is a lot of other differences which we will see later on. Let me not go there. But at least at this point of time, we can understand that there's a difference. It's an array, that's an array, right? Let's conclude our discussion at least at this point of time over here only. But there's one other point. There is a possibility that I will have multiple input fields with same name. I will have multiple input fields with same. That is a possibility. Of course, that's a possibility. So now on this ELE, if I try to implement dot, we can clearly see our few methods. We can see for each there. So that's what node actually, the first difference is that it is an array structure here. So ELE dot for each makes sense. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So in this case, now I can simply go write item comma index here. And then over like this, I will simply take on my item, please implement a style property and go and make their background color, and make the background color is equals to what is equals to, let's suppose, green, like this. And once I do that, we can clearly see it gets implemented. So for each loop is properly implemented here. We can implement for each loop. We can implement other methods maybe, but that is the first difference. And other differences, when we talk about HTML collection, it holds only the HTML elements, collection of HTML elements. But when we talk about node list, there's a possibility apart from HTML elements, it will hold text nodes, it will hold comment nodes, it can hold all of the nodes that we have. It is about nodes, not the HTML elements. So whatever that particular element, its nodes are, it will give you the node structure that are related to that particular query. But I will show you the main actual difference. This is not the actual difference. The actual difference is related to static and live, which we will see later on once we understand few other concepts of DOM. So remind me this in our tomorrow's class as well. Okay. So I hope what name selector, you have understood what name selector is. So name selector is actually get elements by a name. It's a very unique selector, a very important selector inside our HTML, but it is related to the input forms. It's related to the elements where name attribute can be selected. So this element, this particular method will return those elements, those nodes, those particular items where the attribute name matches with its query. Where the attribute name matches with its query. Okay. Am I clear? Am I clear? Done? Get elements, we have already seen that, right? Get element by tag name, this one. Get elements by tag name, we have already seen that. It returns an HTML collection, not node list. So tell me quickly, this method returns an HTML collection. This method returns an HTML collection. But on the other hand, when we talk about this method, it does not return an HTML collection, it returns a node collection. It returns a node list. Okay, that's the one first difference. And other difference is what it does, it returns an elements that are related to my input fields, that are related to an attribute where name attribute is used. I hope that is completely understood. So with this, we have completed this particular selector as well. So let me try to control X this. Let me try to paste it here. No, that's not the whole conclusion. There are a lot of other conclusions related to it. Okay, we will do a half an hour discussion around it, of course, in our tomorrow's class. Okay, now see, there's two more types of selectors. Okay, and what are those two selectors? Now these selectors are very often used. Number one is called a query selector. And when we say query, what do we mean by query? Can we all agree to one point, which is that in our JavaScript, an element can be found with help of its class. An element can be found with help of its ID. An element can be found with help of its name. An element can be found with help of any combinator. Give me a quick example of how many combinators we have. 4. We have child combinator. We have descendant, right? I'm trying to revise that as well. We have descendant. We have child, descendant. We have general sibling, right? We have adjacent sibling, right? Adjacent sibling. Not only that, we have our pseudo selectors as well, pseudo classes as well, I mean, right? So we have pseudo classes as well. We have pseudo elements as well, right? And when we talk about pseudo elements, we actually mean by nth child, first child, last child, nth child, an plus b, right? Last type of child, first type of child. So all these selectors, we can select an element based on its attribute as well, attribute selector as well. So all of these are nothing but query selectors, which means an element, actually it's not necessary we will just try to find an element via particular relationship called as class and ID or name. No, but any type of selector can be actually treated as an query. So whatever selector you have implemented inside your CSS, right? By that, this is what I actually mean. Have we created inside our CSS like this? I will simply say div, and then we write curly brace, then we write p, and then we simply go right over there pseudo class, and I write nth child, and that nth child we write something like this even. Do we do something like this? Yes or no? If we want to find an element that matches this particular query, we can even do that in JavaScript. That's what query selector actually means. Even if we want to find something else, let me try to, what happened here? I don't want to do this. How can I get back out of it? Okay. Now look at this. This is simply a query. Even with help of this query as well, I can actually find an element. Can we also do something like this? that after this I will simply go write even plus over here as well, then do something else, right? Or tilde sign over there, do something else. So these all are nothing but combination of queries, and in order to find an element with the help of query, we can actually implement one of the selectors inside our DOM called as query selector. So let me create a new file called as dom3.html, and inside is not doom but dom3.html, and let me create a basic boilerplate in which I will simply go create a div with a class of main. Inside that, I will simply tell it to create p 3 times, okay, and p times, sorry, 2 times only. And for this, I will simply go. Let me try to create. Let me create only this much. Now, let's create multiple p's, okay. And to those all these p tags, let me try to create a class, or let's try to create a class like this, like this, like this. So I will simply go create a class over there, and that class is going to be equals to, let's say, para. Done. So maybe after that there's something else as well, whatever we have, maybe h1 tags and xyz things. Now I want to find an element with help of a query, and also let me try to include some text over here. So it says a random text. Okay, please make sure that you like this video. Okay, please do that. Okay, now over here I will simply go write script tag. Okay, inside this script tag, I know I have to find an element, so I will use ele is equals to, on my document I will simply go and use a selector called as query selector. So what is the selector that I'm going to use? Called as query selector. And in this, it receives a query. It does not receive the class name, id name, but it receives a query, which means with its symbols as well, with all the possible combinations. For example, I want to select an element whose class is main, so I will not write main here. No, that's not how it's going to work. I will write with dot. This is what query means. So if I have to find an element with a query over there, it means dot main. Maybe over here the same element has an id, so I will simply go at id over there, which is container. So if I have to find an element with id whose id is container, I will not write container here, but I will go here and write hash container, because this is query. Do you understand the difference between normal state and the difference between the queries? Queries means with its proper symbols, how you will write a selector inside CSS. That's what the query means. So if you have to find an element with a specific query, in that particular case, we will write our query selector. So let me write console.log ele, right? And let me try to divide my screen into 2 parts, and we can clearly see now, as soon as I try to open my DOM3 here, we can see in the output, we can see our div. And always remember, now there's a possibility. Instead of finding a query selector with hash container, let me try to find dot para. And how many elements there are with dot para? 4 elements. 4 elements have class dot para. But it always will return the first element it matches the query with. So query selector is not going to return all of the elements. Query selector is going to return only one element that matches the query. So it's one of the very best and very simple methods over there, with the help of which we can reach to an element and find an element out of it. We can do that. So query selector is one of the very easiest methods, one of the very frequent used methods inside our DOM. And with the help of this, we can simply return the first element that matches the query. Now, I don't want to write dot para. My agenda is to make you understand what other things can go here. Can I write p tag? Of course, that's also a query, because p is the name of the element and it's a query. And p, but if we write without any symbol, let's suppose I will write p, or I will write, let's suppose, adfar. It means I am trying to tell it over there, hey, please return an element whose tag name is adfar, since there's no dot in front of it, hash in front of it, or anything else. So it will try to find an element with what? With adfar element name. But I will simply go write div, and inside that, please target p tag. So it's going to return the first element. So it's in query div greater than p. What does that mean? What does that mean? Child selector. Select the first child over there. Child selector, combinator there. Div greater than p, and it selects it. I hope that makes sense. Not next child. No. First child only. All of these p tags do satisfy this particular query, because all of them are child p tags to this div. We have seen this combinator class. Make sure if you have any confusion, you can go there and understand combinators properly. So all of these p tags satisfy this particular query. Do we all agree with that? Do we all agree with that? Yes or no? Tell me one thing. I have a simple question here. I will simply go create a main tag, and inside main tag I will add p tag, and p tag is going to simply display something, and tell me, is this p tag satisfied with this query or not? Does this p tag satisfy this query or not? In if we talk about normal, leave the JavaScript aside. I'm talking about query only. Yes or no? No, of course not. If you are saying yes, Ashu and Shubham, if you are saying yes, go and watch Combinator class. This does not contain this p tag. If I write div space p, then in that case it satisfies this p tag, because this is a descendant selector, this is a child selector. There's a difference. This means target all of the p tags that are part of div anywhere in its hierarchy, whether it's first child, second child, third child, fourth child, grain child, grain child, no matter what. But if I talk about this, it has to be in the first hierarchy only, the first level only, which means only these p tags. But if I talk about space p, it means it will target these p tags, this query as well as this p tag. But since we know that we are talking about query selector, it will return the first element that matches the query, which is this particular element. Very good. Now, if I write something like this, is this correct? In that case, it might make sense, Basu. Is this correct? And what does it mean? It means now if I write over the p tag, and that p tag will simply have some text, this p tag will be selected because it's an adjacent sibling selector, right? So my agenda is not to teach you what plus means, what greater than means, what space means in selectors. I don't want to teach that because I've already discussed, I've completely taken a class on that. My point that I'm trying to make you understand is what arguments can go over here. Anything can go. I can simply tell it inside div, please go p tag, and that p tag has to be the nth child, and target the nth child, which is 1. If I go write 1, it absolutely displays me this element because this is the first child, right? I can simply go right over the, let's suppose 3. In that particular case, this is its third child. You can clearly visualize the difference in the output as well, right? So please try to understand that when we talk about query selector is not just going to receive classes, IDs. Now, whatever you can think of, attribute selectors, pseudo classes, pseudo elements, classes, any combination, whatever you have seen in your CSS, every selector is possible here, every query is possible here. But with query, it has to be query. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, this is ELE. ELE means the element itself. Is this ELE HTML element or an array? It's an HTML element, which means we can directly go there, tell it, write any property here. So I can simply go write inner HTML here, right? I can go write inner HTML directly and it will properly work. Why? Because it returns only one element. So if I do that, we can clearly see the element text got changed in the output, right? We can similarly go here and tell it ELE dot style. Of course, it will make sense. Style dot, I will simply go write background color. It should work. Why is it not working? Background color. Let's see if it works or not. Background color is equals to red. So if I make it red like this, it worked properly. Perfect, right? So we have to understand that all of those properties are going to work because it is ELE. ELE is representing right now the element itself, not any other structure. So we can implement any such property. So this is what we mean by query selector. But there's also one another selector here, because when we write our query, it's not necessary it's going to return only one element. Maybe over here, when I try to write something like this, will it return only one element? No. When we write div p, it means all of the descendants of div. Wherever it happens inside my web application, return me all those p's. That's what query represents. Sure, Basu. But at least at this point of time, when I'm writing query selector, it's returning in the first element it matches its query with. That's where we have one other type of selector. I will simply say let my ELE2 is equals to on my document. Please find a query selector. And this time I'm going to use query selector all. And let me simply go mention a query with div space p. And if I do that, and then if I try to console.log ELE2, we can clearly see in the output, it actually returns node list. Okay, it actually returns node. So it does not return an HTML collection. It returns a node list over there. So how many? See. One very important point over here. we can clearly see that this particular thing is an array. So if anyone tells you, at least at this point of time, what is the difference between get elements by tag name, get elements by class name, and selector all, the answer is those two methods returns HTML collection, this returns node list. And I told you what node list is. At least at this point of time we have understood few things, but later on we can understand some other thing as well. Let me try to do one other thing. So I will simply go right, let my ELE is equals to on my document, please get an element by ID or class name, and that class name has to be para, right? I'm selecting these elements now, and let me try to console this ELE as well. So console.log my ELEE, right? And we can see we have node list here, we have HTML collection here, right? So see, this has a prototype. Although we don't know what prototype is, unfortunately, I think we should have taken class on prototype first. But no matter, no issues. We will discuss that later on as well, right? And we can see X, Y, Z things. Although let's not discuss prototype because prototype is something different. Prototype has to be properly understood here. See, at least right now we can understand one small thing here, which is if you check the prototype of node list, there is for each mentioned. So it means when we talk about node list, for each is mentioned, for each is implemented on the node list. But on the same time, when we talk about prototype HTML collection, do you see for each? No, we do not see for each. We see only length, we see only named item, that's it. But if we talk about here, we see for each, we see entries. Entries is also a method, right? We see item, we see keys, we see few of the methods, but we do not see our for each method implemented here. That's the first difference. So in the HTML collection, for each won't be implemented, but here for each will be implemented. Why? Because for each is properly part of the prototype for the HTML collection. I hope that makes sense. Now when we talk about query selector all, it returns a node list. So of course it means now we can implement a proper looping technique. Whatever looping technique we want, we can implement that, at least for each loop, because it's a part of its prototype. Now my question is, can we implement map on it? Can we implement map on it? Let's go here and let me try to implement the complete syntax first of all. Did you saw, guys, when we try to open the prototype of ELE2, I mean node list, it actually holded map there? No, it did not hold map there. That's why even you can see ele2.map is not a function. So it's not part of the prototype, but for each is. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Yes or no? That's why I implemented map here, because few seconds back when we tried to open the prototype, that box for that node list, there was only one method attached to it, which was for each. So map method is not going to be implemented here as well. So that's why even over it, you can either implement separate operator or array.from to actually implement map on it, which we can do. But map will not be implemented. But on the same time, if I implement for each loop, will it be implemented? Of course it will be, because for each was the part of the prototype. For each was there in that box, and now for each can be implemented. And I can simply go tell it to give it an argument called as item, right? And then followed, I will simply go write one thing, which is console.log my item. And once I do that, we can clearly see all those items individually as well. So with this is what we actually mean by selectors. So allow me a second. Let me try to share the address form. After that, we will continue for a few minutes, because you have asked it to share the address 5 minutes early. Although I'm not able to find that. Yes, I found it. Perfect. So this is the address link. Please make sure that you submit the address only if you have watched the entire session. Okay. Remember one point: if you have not watched the entire session, you marking an address or not, it's one of the same things. Assignments and address make sense, not just address. You have to complete the assignments as well. I know last assignment that I launched, not this one, the previous, only 20 submissions are there. So it's one of the same things, whether you mark your address or not. Assignments are very important. Assignments are very mandatory. So you have to make sure you submit the assignments properly as well. Let me come back. In the meantime, you can submit the address. So with this, let's conclude our today's class. Today's class was one of the very interesting classes, I would say. Why? Because now we have found a way. We have modeled our web application into an object. We have modeled our application into a JavaScript. So now with the help of the same model over there, what we can do is we can actually enhance, manipulate, update, or whatever we are supposed to do. Although we have seen only two properties or three properties related to updation with respect to web development: inner HTML, inner text, text content, and also our style. That's it. We have not seen anything else. That is some other class, maybe tomorrow, right? But today's agenda was that with the help of the same DOM, How can we actually find an element from that particular DOM structure, from that document object model? And we have seen multiple methods. We have seen document.get element by id returns the first element it matches its id with. Second method was document.get elements by class name. Whatever class name we mentioned, it returns HTML collection of that. Third method over there was get elements by tag name, also returns HTML collection, whatever the tag name we mentioned. Fourth selector was get element by name, which means name attribute, and we know that there's only one HTML form elements input forms which holds name attribute, so we can actually implement it on there. So they have a very special selector attached with them forms. Then we saw query selector. It returns one of the uh, first element that matches its query with. So query selector do not return all, but query selector all returns all, and it returns a node list. So my last note that Windows web page and documents also. Window is the whole tab. Window is the whole tab. When we talk about tab, it just does not hold this web page. It holds reload, it holds history, it holds inner width, it holds width, it holds height. So that's what window means. Window means a whole browser tab. That's what window means. When we talk about document means that starts here, that ends over here. The web page. So document is a part of window, but window is the whole tab that we have. Am I clear? Done? I hope that makes sense. So this was our today's class. So conclusion is that when we talk about now dynamic web page, and today was the first class when we actually created dynamic websites. Although this is just a 2% of it, there's lot of things that we are supposed to do, lot of things that we have to do, which we will eventually do moving forward. So make sure that you subscribe the channel right now. If you have not, you share the video, you put a comment. I have one small request. Even if you check last video that we had on objects, and if you ask me, I would rate that particular session the toppest good session, I would say, because I have seen objects on every single YouTube channel almost. I've seen a lot of resources, but I've never seen anyone explain objects like that, like all of that detail, that in depth. And yet I can see only 5 comments there, 5 feedbacks there. So whether you like it or not like it, please put it in the chat. Please, sorry, comment section. That is the at least a small thing that you can actually return, right? Please do that. So please put a proper valid comment in the comment sections, even in this video, in the previous videos, if you have not already done that. Share this video. Let people know. You can bring people how many you want. It's completely up to you. If anyone is looking for modern content, I think this is one of the best resources that they can find on the internet. So please help them finding this channel, help me growing this channel as well. And let's meet in the next class. That's tomorrow, hopefully. Do we have any holiday tomorrow, guys? Is there any holiday? Because today some of the people said there's some holiday, right? No? Okay. In that case, we'll take our class tomorrow, 10 to 12 in the morning. Done? So please make sure that you put a valid comment. You share this video with your friends. Let people know about this particular course. Let them know, and let's continue the next class. Okay. Today's festival, but tomorrow is not, right? I was unaware about that today's Dasera. Okay. Otherwise, I would have not taken class. I would have let you enjoy your day. So let's connect tomorrow with much more concepts of this. Please share the feedback in the comment section. Please do that of today's class, and also make sure that you subscribe the channel, you like the video right now, and you share it, and you put a comment later on as well. That's the only thing that I need in the return, nothing else. I think the channel deserves a lot of subscribers, right? So please help me in order to achieve that. I hope you have submitted the form, addends form. If not, let me paste it again. This is the addends form. Please make sure you submit it now. And I will also share the addends update probably on Wednesday. And till then, thank you so much, guys. Have a great day ahead. See you in the next class. That's tomorrow. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend ahead. Bye, guys. Bye, bye, bye. I will keep the session open for 2 minutes. Likewise, Shivani, likewise. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Perfect. Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.